Today's daf is daf Yud Aleph, and we'll begin with Omar Rab Chiya bar Ovin, Omar Rab Yeshua ben Karcha. So we're dealing with the case of the Bnos Lot, who got Lot drunk in sequence. The older daughter on one night, the younger daughter on the other night, and during Lot's drunkenness, they had a relationship, an illicit relationship with their father. From the first relationship of the older daughter, we have Moav. She named the child that she had from Lot Moav. Moav means from my father. And the Gemara criticizes her for being so explicit as to give a name that indicates she had an illicit relationship with her own father. And the second daughter on the second night became pregnant, and she named her child Ammon. And what lessons do we derive from this? Li'olam yakdim adam l'dvar mitzvah. These two girls had in mind l'shem shamayim, a mitzvah of propagating the world. And yakdim adam, a person should try to get there as fast as he can. I'm thinking this week's parsha we have Bikurim. Bikurim is the first. We don't wait till the end of the harvest. When we bring maser, but Bikurim is at the very beginning. Because the older of the two daughters preceded the younger daughter by one day, which doesn't seem offhand like a big deal, but she wanted to take the initiative first to do this mitzvah, is therefore Zochso v'kodmata arba doros l'malchus. So if we count the generations that came from Moav, who is the child of the first girl, the first daughter, the older one who took the initiative first, then we end up with four generations of the line of Malchus based David, and that is Oved, Yishai, David, and Shlomo. Now, all of these are considered part of the Malchus based David because each and every one of these was worthy of being a king. However, in the case of the second daughter, who had relations secondly on the second night, then her descendants through Ammon would not be able to emerge as part of the line of the Davidic Malchus until Rechavam, who is the son of Shlomo HaMelech, whose mother was from Ammon. So Rechavam on his maternal side was a great multiplied by seven grandson of Ammon through his mother, who was an Ammonis and was one of the various wives of Shlomo HaMelech. So that the first daughter has four generations of Malchus Beis David before Rechavam, and that's because she took the initiative first. Tan Rabbanan, Me'am ha'aretz, in the parsha of Chatos, it says that you should take the Chatos. It says V'im nefesh achas techta b'shgoga me'am ha'aretz v'asos achas mitzvah Hashem, etc., etc. And Me'am ha'aretz indicates some of the people, but not all the people. So the word Me'am means amongst the people. Prat, this comes to exclude Moshiach, a Kohen Gadol. And in addition to that, Me'am ha'aretz, the same miut, will exclude also the Nasi. And this means that the Torah is saying that the Melech HaMashiach, if he violates a chiyuv kares b'shogeg, instead of bringing a kizba or a seira, he brings a par. And in the case of the Nasi, if he inadvertently violates a chiyuv kares, instead of bringing a seira or a kizba, he brings a soyer. Frek the Gemara, I don't understand. I don't need this miyut me'am ha'aretz. Halo kvar yatzu. The Torah in the Parshios of the Kohen Gadol and the Nasi, respectively, already tells us that the Mashiach lidon v'par. The Torah tells us that the Kohen Gadol has to bring a par, and the Nasi has to bring a soyer. So why do you need these miyutim of Mei Am Haaretz? It's already explicit in the Torah. So the Gemara answers, and this is also part of the Brisa and its presentation. I might think Mashiach al Helim Dovarim Shigas Maisa Mevi Par, but al Shigas Maisa Lechude Mevi Ksizbo Sira. I would think that if you add another condition to the act of Shgaga, and in the case of a Melech, in the case of a Mashiach, of a Kohen, and what additional condition do we add? We add the Halim Dover, that the Melech, that the Kohen HaMashiach came to his own mistaken, erroneous conclusion. Then he brings a par. But if you reduce it to one condition, and you drop the ball on Halim Dover, meaning he only had a classic Shigas Maisa, where he thought that this was Shuman, and it turned out to be Chelev, that in that case maybe he should bring the Kizbah and the Sira like any common member of the Jewish people, Talmud Lomer Me Am Haaretz, Prat L'Mashiach, which means that the Mashiach in Gavra, even if we reduce his shogeg to an identical shogeg of Shigas Maisa like any other Jew, nevertheless, as a Gavra, he is excluded from Kizbah and Seira, and therefore he brings a par. And why do we need Me'ama Aretz Prat L'Nasi? And that we don't really understand. The Gemara says, Teinach Mashiach, El Nasi B'Shigas Maisa Hu Maisi. There is no second condition in Nasi. The Torah says that the Nasi has to bring a Sa'ir, a male goat, for a classic Shigas Maisa. So why do I need Me'ama Aretz? Omer Azvid Mishmei de Ravach, Ma'askina Kagon Shachal Kizayis Chelev Kishu Hedyot. He ate his Kizayis Bishkaga and violated the Chiyuv Chatas while he was a Hedjot, before he was appointed. Subsequently, Nismana, he got appointed to be the Kohen Gadol. I'm sorry, I keep making that mistake, to be the Nasi. And clearly, in such a case, he would have to bring a classic Chatos Seira, because he was pre-appointed, he was a commoner at the time that he violated the Isa Chelev. However, the Achakas Nodalo, he only found out about the eating of the Chelev, meaning he thought he ate Shuman, after he was already appointed as a Nasi. I might think that even though he found out about it after he was already appointed as a Nasi, nevertheless, since his violation was complete at the time that he ate the Chelev, and he was not yet appointed as a Nasi, therefore you'd have to bring a classic Karban Chatas of Kizba or Seira. Kamash Malan, the Torah says no, since he only found out about it after he was appointed as a Nasi, therefore he doesn't bring a Kizba or Seira, he brings a Sayer. So the Gemara says, Ha Nichel Rabbi Shimon, Diazo Basa Yedia, El Rabbanan Diazo Basa Chata Mai Ikel. This makes sense according to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says that what generates the chiyuv of a karban shkaga, it's not just the action of eating the chelev, but it's also the idea when he finds out about it. So here, since he found out about it after he was already in Nasir, we would have entertained the idea that the status of his chiyuv shkaga is that of a nasi, and therefore he brings a soyer rather than a seira. Kamashmala know that even though his yedias hachet took place after he was already appointed as a nasi, nevertheless, we're going to say that he has to bring that carbon which every single common Jew would bring for a shkaga, namely he brings a seira. But if you go like the Chachamim, and the Chachamim say that what determines the carbon and what generates the Chiv carbon, it's only the Chet itself, not the idea. The idea is just an external technical condition that has to be met, but it's not part of the Machayev itself. Is then, why would there be a Havamina that this Kohen, that this Nasi, who was appointed as a Nasi after he had done the Avera, would not bring a Seira? El Omer Rav Zvid Mishnei D'Rabach Ma'askina Gon Shoch Al Chatzi Kizayis Chelik Shu Hedyot V'Nismane V'Hishlimo V'Acher Kach Nodelo. What's the case? For eating chelev b'shogeg, you bring a chatas only under the condition that you ate a full kizayis. He only ate half a kizayis while he was pre-appointment of a nasi as a commoner. So at this point, as a commoner, he's not chayev a sa'ir, and for that matter, he's not chayev a se'ira either. But then he ate the other half of the kizayis. But when did he eat the other half of the kizayis? He did so after he was appointed as the nasi. And then he found out that he ate half a zayis of chelev, and that he originally, before he was appointed, ate a half a zayis. Halkadet chamin in its tarif. V'naisei kizbo sira. We would think that we can add and integrate the chatzi zayis that he ate now, after he finds out, which he ate that half a zayis after he became a nasi, post-appointment, and add that and integrate that into the first chatzi zayis that he ate as a commoner, and therefore he has to bring the classic carbon chatas of a commoner. Kamash Malan comes along the mute of Mei Amaretz to teach you that in this case he doesn't bring a seira like a commoner, because we cannot be mitzaref the chatzi zayis that he ate as a nasi together with the original chatzi zayis that he ate before he was appointed. So that Me'ama Aretz excludes this case. And interesting, what's the status here? You might say, well, since he completed the Zayas when he was a Nasi, let him bring Chach. At least he should bring a Sawyer. No, he's Potter. He doesn't bring anything. He's completely exempt. But Rav Amir Nachman, Rav raised the following question: is Sius Ma'usha Tafsik? There's a halacha of mafsik, and the question is whether nesius is a mafsik. What's the case? Kigon shachal chatzi zayis chelev kshu hedyot, and then Ismane, he was appointed as a nasi. So at this point in time, if he were to eat a chatzi zayis of chelev, then he would be potter. But he didn't eat the chatzi zayis of chelev after he was appointed, but rather the avar. He was removed from his position as a nasi, and then vishlimo. So both the first chatzi zayis as well as the second chatzi zayis were both eaten as a commoner, and therefore we should be able to integrate them to form one whole chiv chatas of a kizba or a seira. Hosam hu delo mitztaref. In the case where he ate the other chatzi zayis when he was a nasi, you cannot integrate that into the chatzi zayis that he ate before he was appointed. But here it's different. Why? Because he ate both chatzi zaysim when he was a commoner, a hedjot. He ate both of the two chatzi zaysim when he was a hedjot. Mitztaref. What's this for to say lo mitztaref? This is where the Gemara introduced a concept called a mafsik. O dilmo lo shna. Maybe we should say that since in the interim between time T1 when he ate the first chatzi zayis as a hedjot, and time T3 when he ate the second chatzi zayis also as a hedjot, In the middle, you had time T2, where he was appointed as a Nasi. And the fact that he was a Nasi in between the first Chatzis and the second Chatzis creates a wedge, a mafsik between the two. Tivshol Lemi Hadi Ulam, Rabbi Yochanan. We're going to have an answer from Rabbi Yochanan's ruling. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Ochal chelev v'hifrish karban. A man ate chelev and he was mafresh. He designated a karban, meaning a seira for his chatos vehemir, and now he rebels against the Torah and rejects its mitzvos. And we'll see soon that a mumar, we don't accept his karban. V'chazer, but now he wants to do tshuva and he wants to bring a chatas for the zayis of chelev that he ate before he was a mumar. And the answer is, says Rabbi Yochanan, hol v'nidcha nidcha, since he was rejected at point, well, we'll call it point T2. T1 is when he ate the chelev. And T2 is when he became a mumar and rejected the Torah. Such a person cannot bring a karma. But now he did tshuva, and you would say, let's reinstate him to his original state. No, no, no. We say, hol v'nidcha nidcha. He was a mumar, and that separates him from anything that comes afterwards. I wonder about, my Rebbe used to talk about a case of a Kohen who killed someone. If a Kohen is guilty of murder, even unintentional murder, he can no longer duchen, because his hands with which he duchens are stained with blood. And what happens if he later does tshuva? It's a big controversy about this. Can he now duchen because tshuva kind of creates a new entity, a new personality? But here we're saying that as far as the chiyuv karban is concerned, even though now he's willing to do tshuva, he wants to bring his karban chatos, nevertheless, hol v'nidcha nidcha. And therefore, we're going to apply that same logic to the case of, who was it that asked the suffix of Rava's suffix, where he ate a kezayis chelev. I'm sorry. Again, Rava said he ate a half a kezayis chelev. Then he was appointed as a nasi. He was removed from his nasius. Then he ate the other half of chelev. So we're going to say hol v'nidcha nidcha. Before he ate the second half of the chelev, he was nidcha. He was excluded from the carbon of a commoner of a seira. And the Gemara says that's no analogy. Hachi hashto. How can you compare the two cases? Mumar lav barasuye carbon who, if he became a mumar at some point, even though he had eaten a full kezayis and he was mafresh a karban seira. Nevertheless, he was nidche. Okay, he was nidche because he can't bring a karban. This is what's called in brisker terminology a hafkas gavra. His status as far as karbanos has completely nullified him. But if we talk about a nasi, bari suye karban who, he could certainly bring a karban. Again, if he had violated this shkaga of eating chelev after he was already appointed as a nasi, he would bring a soyer and not a seir. But nevertheless, he's a bar hachi of karban. So he's a gavra bar chiyuva. As far as the karban, we don't apply dechia unless you're mafkia, you undermine your status as a gavra. Now we're talking about Osham Talui, and he ate Safek Chelev. Apparently, a full kezayis of Safek Chelev. He doesn't know whether it's Shuman or Chelev. And at this point, he should bring an Osham Talui, even a Smana. But now he was appointed as the nasi. He doesn't even know that he ate a Safek Chelev. V'nodalal sfeiko mahu. He finds out that what he ate on the day before he was inaugurated as king was Safek Chelev, Safek Shuman. Should he bring an asham talui. So the Gemara now analyzes Reb Zera's suffix. According to the Rabbanon, Maisi Asam Tolu. For sure, he's chayiv in Asam Tolu because that chiv was clinched when he did the avera and he ate suffik chaylev suffik shumon. Elo kiti boilecha. Where does Rabbi Zera's suffik apply? Liba the Rav Shimon, according to Rav Shimon, who says that what's the machayiv? The machayiv is not just the chait, but also the idea. Midishtani levadai ishtani lesafek. Shall we say that in this case, when the gavra changes, that he becomes a nasi, is therefore ishtani lesafek. Just 1 second. Just 1 second. I'm going to make an assumption. I hope I'm right. Just 1 second. Right. I just, again, there's so many different dinim. I always have to make sure I don't make any mistake. But if I'm not mistaken, the nasi doesn't bring an asham toli. So in a case where he violated a vadai chelev as a commoner, then he gets appointed as a nasi. He doesn't bring a chatos, meaning a seira. He brings a soyer. So we see that the change in the identity and the status of the nasi does not undermine the original chiv, and therefore it's here that he ate the suffix chelev when he was a commoner, and therefore, let's say he engendered a chiv of Asham Toli, therefore he has to bring that Asham Toli. 1 second. Therefore what? And therefore he doesn't have to bring the Asham Toli, just like he doesn't have to bring the chatos of a yachid. O dilma, should we say, ki ishtani levadai, dishtani korban didei, in a case where he ate vadai chelev, and now he became the nasi. So I understand now that instead of bringing a soyer, instead of bringing a seira, he brings a soyer. Aval hacha, but here, in a case of a suffix, whether it's chelev or shuman delosh tani korban didei, so it seems like I made a mistake. No, that a nasi is also chayav aim olaisi asham tolui. Again, what was the first tzad to say that he doesn't bring an asham tolui? I'm sorry, I'm so pressured by the time. I don't have midish tani levadai, ish tani lesafek. Ah, so I made a mistake. Let me try to correct myself. The first side of the Gemara, midishtani levada ishtani lesofek, knows very well that a nasi is chayiv and a noshim totally no different than a commoner. But the Gemara thinks that although it's the identical carbon that he would be chayiv when he finds out about the sofek chela, because even though he finds out about it when he's a nasi, but a nasi is also chayiv an asham toli. But nevertheless, since in the case of chatos, where the carbon changes, and once he becomes appointed as a nasi, instead of bringing a seir, he brings a soyer. Therefore, the halacha is in chatos. What is the halacha? He's potter. Right, because he got the idea, and we're going now according to Reb Shimon, after he became appointed as a nasi. So Mimanavshach, he can't bring a chatos, because as a commoner to bring a seira, he can't be chayav, because nishtana dino. He has a whole new din in karbanos, because now he's a nasi, and nasi doesn't bring a chatos of a soyer, of a seira. And let's apply the same logic to the case of Asham Tolui and say that according to Reb Shimon, when he finds out about it after he was already appointed as a Nasi, so maybe we should say Ishtani Dino, or do we say no? In the case of Chatos, he has a different carbon Chatos, and therefore we say Ishtani. By being appointed as a Nasi, he's got a new status as far as carbon Chatos, he's a new Gavra. But as far as Hashem Tali is concerned, it's the same Hashem Tali, whether he's a commoner or he's a Nasi Teku. The Gemara lets it stand. Tana Rabban. Me'am ha'aretz, Reb Shimon bar Yossi, Omer Mishum Reb Shimon, Prat Lemumar. Right, so why does the Torah use this miyad of Me'am ha'aretz to exclude a Mumar? Right, somebody who rejects the Torah. Now, Reb Shimon bar Yossi, in this brisa, is going to come to the same conclusion, but from a different pasuk. Instead of using the pasuk Me'am ha'aretz, he used the pasuk Asher lo te'asenu b'shkaga v'ashem. And I think the word v'ashem here is understood to mean that he realized his guilt. And at that point, he wants to bring a kapara. But if he's a mumar, then even when you tell him, hey, buddy, you ate chalev, he couldn't care less. And therefore he's not shav miyadiyaso. He doesn't do tshuva. And had he known it was chalev, he would go ahead and eat it anyway. My beinayu, what difference is there between Tanakam and Reb Shimon? They both come to the same identical conclusion, just from two different drushes. Rav Nuna, mumar lechol chalev mevi korban al adam ikar beinayu. This man eats chalev, but he doesn't eat dam. So if you would tell him that this is dam, he would not eat it. Mar Sovar, according to Tanakama, Kaven de Mumar Lechol Chalev, the fact that he deliberately, constantly, continuously eats Chalev makes him into a Mumar. Once he's a Mumar, he's excluded from a carbon. Is Ladam Nami Muvarav. We're not going to say that he's a Mumar only for Chalev and not for Dam. Umar Sovar. But according to Reb Shimon bar Yossi, who everything depends upon whether he shoved me also, if you would have told him before he ate the dam, hey, this is dam, he would not have eaten dam, because even though this man constantly eats chalev, but he doesn't eat dam, Marsov dam mia shav me also who. So therefore, as far as the chiyuv chatos that's incurred by eating dam, he is not considered a mumar because he's in the category of shav me also. So it comes out that according to Tanakama, there's an absolute change in status here. Again, what I call the Hafkas HaGavra, meaning the Gavra now, because he eats chalev constantly, without any hesitations, he's called a Mumar. Whereas according to Reb Shimon bar Yossi, we look at each Avera in and of itself and see if he would be Shav Miyidi also. So even though he is sold on chelev, he's not sold on dam. Frek the Gemara. But Rava Amar to Kliyam Mumar Lechel Chelev Lavi Mumar Ladam. Rava says that we go with the shita of Shavmi Yidioso, and the fact that he's Mumar Lechelev doesn't make him Mumar Ladam. This man eats nevela only because that's what he has available to him. Or maybe he's a poor person, he gets a cheap break by eating nevela. Now he thinks he's eating nevela and he ate shuman. Just 1 second. Not nischalef lo b'shuman that he ate shuman. Nischalef lo b'shuman means his chalev was nischalef lo b'shuman. He ate chalev thinking that it was shuman, which is a classic case of a chatos. Is mar sovar according to Tanakama Kevin Dilatei and Achim Amazid Mumarhu, since he would, in order to save a buck, or because he enjoys this nevela, in Tom's barbecue set, he enjoys that, so that makes him into a mumar. And if that's a mumar, then even though if all things were equal, he would rather eat shuman than chalev, but since he's a mumar, he cannot bring a chatos. We don't give him the privilege of attaining atonement by bringing a chatos. Mar sover, however, according to Rabbi Yossi, kevan de ilu ashkach de terelo achil, if he would have found shuman instead of chalev, he would not have eaten the chalev. He only chooses the one that's beneficial to him. Is lav mumar, he doesn't have the status of mumar. Ton Rabbana, and now we have a very strange brisa coming up. Ochal chelev ze mumar. Ze mumar, per person who eats chelev is a mumar. And then it says v'yezu mumar. Very strange. Ochal the veil straight for shkotzer v'mosim v'shosi ayinesech. Is Rabbi Yehuda Omer Af Alovesh Kilayim. That is a mumar. Omar Mar, so Gemara says, how do you make sense out of this brisa? It says Ochal Chelev Zeu Mumar, and then it says Hezu Mumar. Ochal Nevelos. My Komer, how do we make sense out of this brisa? The Gemara says Omar Rab Bar Chanom Rabbi Yochanan Hachi Komer. This is the pshat in the brisa Ochal Chelev V'Teyoven Areza Mumar. So the fact that he only eats it for his own gratification, and if he could be gratified by shchuta or by shuman, he would have preferred to eat the heter. He nevertheless, since he made a calculation that I'd rather eat the chalev under these particular circumstances, which means he's amazed, therefore he has the status of a mumar, but lahachis is even worse than a mumar. Harei zeh. Now, what's the next word in your text? You have tztuki? Yes, no, maybe. If you have the Steinsaltz Gemara, it doesn't say Areza tztuki, it says Areza min. Min is someone who worships, idolatry, So we're going to assume that if he's lahachis, meaning even if he had a choice in front of him between Shuman and Chalev, he would rather eat the Chalev in defiance of the law. He is a tztuki. He is a min. We suspect him of idol worship. And if he shechts an animal, we can't eat from his shechita. I mean, in the case of mumar, there may be situations of gadol omed al gabav where maybe we could eat from his shechita, but not in the case of a tztuki or a min. A min who writes a sefer Torah, you have to burn the sefer Torah. Ezu mumar de bistamo stoki. How do we know that he gets to that point where he's beyond being just a regular mumar and he's achieved the ultimate negative categorization. Heavy Omer Ochel Nevel Trefish Kotzerotz Shotzer Dianesa. I mean, these are disgusting, abominable things that a person has a natural. He finds them obnoxious. Why did he eat them? Again, if you were in the Far East, you wouldn't ask that question. But why would he eat them? They're absolutely disgusting. The answer is he did it lahachis. And if he's lahachis, he becomes a tztuki or called a min. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Afalovich Kelayim. I mean, that's obvious. My benaya, why would I think otherwise? Ika benaya Kelayim derabanan. He only violated Kelayim derabanan. Again, you have to know the laws of Kelayim begodim. It could be that midorais it's only a mixture of linen and what's it called, wool and linen. Maybe there are other kinds of kilaim that are only rabbinic. Is mar some of the rice having mumar? According to Tanakama, when do you become a mumar? Only if you violated doraisa constantly. But if you only are sold on violating rabbinic prohibitions, you're not a mumar. Umar Sover, according to Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yehuda kilayim keva de b'farse misura fil d'rabbanan avi mumar. Everybody knows that you're not allowed to wear these kilayim, and therefore, if he went ahead and he wore this kilayim, even though it's d'rabbanan, he is showing that he's a renegade and he doesn't want to observe the Torah, and therefore he's considered already a mumar. Pal giba Rabbi Achov Ravino chadomer l'teoven mumar lahachis stoki. One of these two Amoraim says exactly what we said until now. That if he only eats for external reasons, gratification, etc., then he's only a mumar, but only if he eats in defiance of the Torah, is he a tztoki or a min, chadam, according to another opinion, lahachis, nami mumar. Even if he goes ahead to defy the Torah deliberately, he still only reaches that level of a mumar. He's not a tztuki, ela ezit tztuki. How do you cross the boundary and to get this worse, the most terrible categorization of a tztuki? That's only kol sha'ovid avodas kochav. Meisvei, the Gemara now is going to challenge this second view, meaning that someone who's lahachis. So again, the nafkamin is let's go over it. According to the first view, lahachis is still considered what? A mumar. And according to the second view, lahachis. According to the second view, lahachis still calls a mumar. According to the first view, lahachis is already a min, a tztoki. Meisveil esikasha ochal parush echad or yutush echad. You're eating fleas and flies and hornets and bees. And I don't know what you're eating. Harei mumar. Very strange. I mean, he's doing it lahachis. So the Gemara right away asks, "V'hoch lahachis," which, according to the first daya quoted here above, he is already at tztoki. So why do you say in this brisa he's only a mumar? Kakarle mumar. Hasam diamar etom taima disur. Strange. He's not really fully lahachis. Even though he's eating flies and fleas and mosquitoes, and I don't know what he's eating here, but it's not fully lahachis. He wants to know, he's curious, what does a mosquito taste like? Sounds crazy to us, but hayu dvarim miolam. If you're ever in Thailand, you'll know what I mean. The Ezu Nasi, when we were in Thailand, my wife was curious to see what they were eating. I couldn't go near it. Anyway, Bezu Nasi Zemelech. How do we know that a Nasi is a Melech? Ton Rabbanan Nasi. Yachal Nasi Shevet Kenach Shom Ben. Maybe the word Nasi means he's in control of a Shevet, but he's already considered a Nasi, even though above him is the king. Talmud Lomi called Mitzvah Hashem Elokov. Lahalanu Omer Laman Yilmad Liras Hashem Elokov, meaning that the only one above him who has dominion is the Almighty God. So that can't be the Nasi of the Shevet because he has the king on top of him, but on top of the king, there's no one except for the Almighty. So therefore we know that Nasi is referring to the king of the entire population. It's all based on Psukim in Vayikra and in Dvarim.